The sun's beating down, a perfect Saturday. I'm out on the deck wrestling with this new smoker attachment for the grill. It's one of those big, complicated ones. Go big or go home, I told Sarah when I bought it. Right now I'm thinking I should have stayed home. Maybe taken up something less flammable, like competitive napping. Everything okay out there, honey? Sarah calls from the kitchen door. Her voice has that slightly concerned, slightly amused tone she reserves for my more ambitious DIY projects. Smells a little intense. I wave a reassuring, smoke-stained hand. Just working my magic, babe. This brisket is gonna be legendary, I shout back, trying to sound like a man in complete control of his meat and his fire. Internally, I'm having a different conversation. If legendary means tastes like a tire fire, then yes, Mike, absolutely legendary. I'm trying this new cherry wood chip variety, and maybe I got a little too enthusiastic with the temperature controls, or perhaps the brisket itself was just plotting against me. One minute I'm picturing perfectly smoked slices, the next there's this whoosh. Not a giant, house-consuming inferno, mind you, but significant flames are licking up from the smoker, and a lot of acrid, gray smoke is billowing out. It's already starting to char the deck railing. Okay, I mutter to myself. Intense just got upgraded to actively alarming. I grab the fire extinguisher we keep by the grill, Sarah's idea, and right now I'm thinking I should probably listen to her more often. With a satisfying peef FFT, I blast the initial flames. They die down, sputtering resentfully. The good news? House still standing. Bad news? It smells like Satan's armpit, and I think the deck might be planning a hostile takeover. Smoke is just pouring out from under the deck boards now. I'm calling 911, Mike, Sarah says, already on the deck, phone pressed to her ear. She's calm, practical. That's why I married her. One of us needs to be. Just to be safe. Yeah, good call, I manage, coughing. My eyes are streaming. Tell them it's just a minor, culinary experiment gone rogue, and maybe not to use the sirens too loud? Brenda's probably timing her afternoon power nap, and we wouldn't want to disturb the Queen. Brenda, our HOA president. The mere thought of her adds another layer of stress to the smoldering situation. This is just the kind of thing she lives for. An incident, a potential violation, a chance to wield her clipboard like a scepter. So I'm standing on the front lawn, the spent fire extinguisher at my feet, watching the street like a man expecting a pizza delivery, only instead of a pepperoni supreme, it's a giant red truck full of people who are hopefully much better at putting out fires than I am at starting them. The distant wail of sirens grows closer. Relief starts to wash over me. Help is on the way. Then I see her. Brenda. Clipboard in hand, visor set to maximum authority. An HOA logo polo shirt stretched taut over her disapproving frame. She's marching into the middle of the street like she's about to inspect the troops before they storm the beaches of Normandy. Only in this case, the beach is my slightly charred deck. And the troops are, well, the fire department. Engine 7, bless its big red heart, pulls up, slowing as it approaches our house. But Brenda doesn't budge. She stands firm, arms crossed, directly in its path. A human roadblock of pure, unadulterated indignation. Captain Miller, a guy with a weathered face and tired eyes, leans out of the fire truck window. Ma'am, afternoon. We got a call about a structure fire? Need to get through. His voice is calm, professional, but I can already hear the underlying sigh. He's dealt with her type before. Brenda consults her clipboard as if it contains ancient, sacred texts. Fire captain, is it? She says, her voice loud enough to carry to my mortified ears. According to HOA Regulation 14, subsection B, paragraph 3, no vehicles exceeding a gross weight of 26,000 pounds or possessing more than 2 axles are permitted on residential easement asphalt, without prior written approval from the Architectural Review Committee, submitted no less than 10 business days in advance. Your vehicle, she gestures vaguely at the gleaming fire engine, appears to be substantially out of compliance. She taps the clipboard with a pen for emphasis. The pen of righteousness. I just stare. My jaw, I'm pretty sure, hits the St. Augustine grass, which, by the way, Brenda had cited me for being a quarter-inch too long last Tuesday. My smoldering deck is literally 50 feet away, and Brenda's debating axle weight with the fire department. You can't make this stuff up. I wish I were. This is happening. Ma'am, Captain Miller says, his voice a little tighter now. This is an emergency vehicle responding to a potential fire. Lives and property could be at stake. Brenda puffs up. And the integrity of our newly resurfaced roadway is also at stake, Captain. We have bylaws for a reason. Perhaps if the homeowner in question, she throws a poisonous glare in my direction, had followed proper fire pit safety protocols as outlined in the spring HOA newsletter, this entire unsightly and non-compliant situation could have been avoided. Brenda! I finally shout, finding my voice. It comes out a bit squeaky. My deck is smoking. Can we discuss your deep-seated love for asphalt after they make sure my house isn't going to burn down? She ignores me completely, turning back to Captain Miller like I'm a mildly annoying insect. Furthermore, your light bar, when active, exceeds the decibel level permitted after 1 p.m. on weekends as per Noise Ordinance Addendum 6. I have received numerous complaints. I can see Mrs. Henderson peeking through her blinds across the street. Nosy Nancy, 3 doors down, is already on her porch, phone held aloft. Pretty sure I'm about to be a feature on the neighborhood Facebook group's What's That Ruckus thread. I'm pretty sure my brain just blue-screened. Brenda was going to let my house become a charcoal briquette to protect the sanctity of her precious pavement. The sheer, unmitigated audacity of it. This wasn't just an HOA issue anymore. This was a Brenda issue. And Brenda issues, I was rapidly learning, required unconventional solutions. The firefighters are looking at each other. I can see them through the windshield. One's got his head in his hands. Captain Miller is rubbing his temples, a slow, deliberate motion, like he's trying to physically massage the disbelief out of his brain. You could see him mentally calculating if he could just drive over Brenda. I think we all were, just a little. Dispatch, Captain Miller says into his radio, his voice flat, devoid of all hope. Engine 7, we have a civilian obstruction at the scene. Yeah, you heard me. Requesting police presence for, bylaw interpretation. He pauses. And maybe a psychiatrist. I might have imagined that last part. Bylaws, obstruction, heavy machinery. Wait a minute. My gaze drifts towards my driveway. Towards the massive, bright yellow, 60-foot articulating boom lift parked there. It had been delivered just this morning for the kids' epic Treehouse of Awesomeness project. My weekend project. My ridiculously oversized, probably not HOA compliant if she thought about it for 2 seconds ladder. It was so new, the plastic was still on the joystick controls, and it was very, very big. An idea, a terrible, wonderful, magnificently stupid idea, starts to flicker in my smoke-addled brain. She wants to talk about oversized vehicles and proper procedure? Fine. I've got an oversized vehicle, and my procedure is going to be epic. If the fire truck can't get to the fire, maybe the fire, or at least access to it, can get up and over. Mike, what's happening? Sarah's at the front door now, her voice tight with a mixture of alarm and that, "What have you done now?" tone I know so well. Are they arguing with Brenda? Is that this? Oh my God, is she quoting bylaws at them? A wild glint must be in my eye, because she takes a small step back. Brenda's being Brenda, honey, I say, a manic grin spreading across my face. But I think I just had a moment of malicious inspiration, or possibly a stroke. Either way, stay here, and maybe get your phone. You're gonna want to film this. I give Captain Miller a subtle, give me 2 minutes gesture through the fire truck's windshield. He just stares back, bewildered. Perfect. He's already questioning reality. What's one more inexplicable event? I turn and sprint towards my driveway. Running away, Michael. Brenda's voice, sharp as broken glass, follows me. Finally realized the extent of your transgressions against this community. Just going to get the appropriate paperwork, Brenda, I call back over my shoulder, the lie tasting sweet and rebellious. Wouldn't want to be out of compliance. This was it. The moment my suburban dad life tipped over into local legend territory, or possibly just a court summons. Details, details. The important thing was, I had a plan. A very tall, very yellow, very disruptive plan. My heart's pounding like a drum solo in a washing machine. I'm fumbling with the keys to my pickup truck, the ones with the little Darth Vader keychain Sarah got me as a joke. It doesn't feel like a joke right now. This feels serious. Seriously ridiculous. My hands are actually shaking, I mutter, jamming the key into the ignition. Not from fear. Okay, maybe a little from fear. The fear of public humiliation, mostly. But it's mostly from the sheer, unadulterated audacity of what I'm about to do. There it is. My glorious 60-foot towable articulating boom lift. Bright yellow. It looks like something you'd use to service power lines or rescue a particularly adventurous cat from the top of a skyscraper. It's the kind of thing you rent when you've seriously overestimated your weekend DIY capabilities, I'd joked to Sal, the contractor, when he dropped it off. Which, to be fair, I had. The treehouse plans were ambitious. This, however, was a whole new level of ambition. Come on, you stupid hitch, I grunt, wrestling with the heavy steel. The pin is fiddly, coated in that weird factory grease. My fingers are slippery with sweat. This wouldn't happen to Bob Vila. Bob Vila's pins are always compliant. I can hear Sarah calling from the porch. Mike, are you sure about this? The police are going to be here any second. Her voice is laced with that specific blend of exasperation and reluctant admiration I've come to cherish. That's what I'm counting on, honey, I shout back, finally ramming the pin home with a satisfying thud. The ladder lift is officially one with my F-150. Adds to the drama. Besides, I'm just facilitating access for emergency services. It's practically my civic duty. Just then, Chad from down the street wanders over. Chad. He's on the HOA board, Brenda's little petunia guarding protege. He's got a perpetually confused look, like he's always just woken up from a nap in a tumble dryer. Hey, Mike, Chad says, squinting at the massive yellow contraption. What's with the, cherry picker? Brenda said you were having some kind of unapproved bonfire, and that the fire department was violating axle ordinances. He says axle ordinances like it's a perfectly normal Saturday afternoon topic. I fire up the truck. The diesel engine grumbles to life. Or, well, it's a Ford, so it sort of grumbles asthmatically. But in my head, roaring. Definitely roaring. Just upgrading my fire safety equipment, Chad, I yell over the engine noise, flashing him a grin that probably looks more like a grimace. To meet new standards. You know how it is. Always innovating for a safer community. I throw the truck into reverse, giving Chad a jaunty little wave that leaves him standing there, mouth slightly agape, looking more confused than usual. Which is saying something. Backing the truck and the enormous ladder slowly out of the driveway is like trying to parallel park a brachiosaurus. The boom lift extends far, far behind the truck, a giant yellow tail. I'm craning my neck, checking mirrors, trying not to take out my own mailbox or, God forbid, Sarah's prize-winning azaleas. Brenda complained about those once. Excessive floral vibrancy, Michael. It's visually aggressive. I swear that woman. Every inch feels like a mile. I can feel Brenda's eyes burning into my back. Or maybe that was still the smoldering deck. Hard to tell. But I know she's watching. Oh, she's watching. As the ladder finally clears the end of my driveway and the full, glorious length of it becomes visible to the street, I see Brenda's reaction. Her jaw, already set in a firm line of disapproval, drops. I mean, it plummets. Her clipboard, her Excalibur of petty tyranny, actually slips from her fingers and clatters onto the asphalt. She points, sputtering, speechless for possibly the first time in her adult life. It was beautiful, like watching a really annoying statue come to life only to be immediately petrified by something even more bizarre. The firefighters. Oh, this is rich. Captain Miller just stares, his mouth a perfectly round O of astonishment. One of the younger firefighters, the one with the elaborate sleeve tattoo, starts to snicker. He tries to turn it into a cough, but it's a pathetic attempt. Another one, a burly guy who looks like he wrestles bears for fun, just slowly shakes his head, a small, incredulous smile playing on his lips. I think I just made Firefighter Dave's, or Steve's, they all look alike in those helmets, entire year. He looked like a kid who just found out Santa was real and drove a 60-foot ladder truck for a sleigh. More faces are appearing in windows now. Nosy Nancy, across the street, is practically hanging out of hers, phone recording. I can see her mouthing, "Oh my God." Mr. Henderson, my quiet, observant neighbor, is on his porch, arms crossed, a thoughtful expression on his face. Then he gives a slow, deliberate nod of approval. A single, perfect nod. It's like a blessing from the Pope of Suburbia. The neighborhood was waking up. This was better than the 4th of July fireworks, and way less predictable. I carefully, oh so carefully, pull my truck alongside the fire engine, effectively parallel parking a 60-foot, articulated boom lift on a suburban street. I try to keep the main body of the lift on my side of the road, or at least on the public easement, so I'm not technically blocking the entire street. Just making a very, very clear statement. Nailed it, I mutter to myself, cutting the engine. Okay, maybe not nailed it so much as haven't hit anything super expensive yet. But close enough. The yellow beast is in position. I hop out of the truck, heart thumping a rhythm that's part terror, part exhilaration. I walk towards the controls of the boom lift, trying to look like I do this every day, which I absolutely do not. Time for the main event. Brenda looked like she was about to spontaneously combust, or possibly issue a citation to the sun for being too yellow. The control panel for the lift looks like something out of a space shuttle. Levers, buttons, warning labels in 3 languages. Okay, Mike, I whisper to myself. You watched the 5-minute YouTube tutorial. You got this. I gingerly touch a joystick. Okay, lever A, button B. Nope, that's the horn. I announce to no one in particular as a surprisingly loud beep echoes down the street. Brenda jumps. So do I, a little. Definitely not the horn. I find the correct lever. With a satisfying hydraulic hiss, the first arm of the boom lift starts to rise. Then the articulating section. Up, up, up it goes. Slowly, majestically. It was like watching a giant metal giraffe wake up from a nap. A very determined, slightly rusty giraffe on a mission to annoy one specific HOA president. Brenda, who had momentarily been stunned into silence by the horn, finds her voice again, and boy does she find it. "Michael!" she screeches, her voice cracking. "Cease and desist. You are in violation of sky rights. Yes, sky rights. And unauthorized aerial maneuvers. This is not an airport. I'm pretty sure sky rights aren't a real thing in our HOA bylaws, but I admire her creativity in the face of overwhelming yellow machinery. Just assisting emergency personnel, Brenda," I shout back over the whine of the hydraulics. The basket is now a good 20 feet in the air. Facilitating access. It's in the new Neighborly Accord Act of 2025, Section 3. Look it up. I definitely just made that up. The Neighbors Coalition for Awesome Solutions or something. Sounds official. The ladder continues its ascent, arching gracefully, or as gracefully as a 60-foot piece of industrial equipment can up and over the street. My plan is simple. Extend the basket high above Brenda's self-righteous blockade, then angle it down towards my deck. It creates a clear, unimpeded aerial pathway. Firefighters can run hoses under it, carry equipment, maybe even rappel down like ninjas if they're feeling theatrical. Or, I can just get up there myself with another extinguisher and make absolutely sure everything is copacetic. The main point is, Brenda's roadblock just became a minor inconvenience under a much, much larger statement. I can see Captain Miller on his radio again. There's a distinct note of amusement in his voice now, even from this distance. Dispatch. The civilian has deployed an aerial ladder. Repeat, civilian is providing alternative access over the other civilian. You might want to send that police unit with a sense of humor, and maybe a very large net. Brenda is now scurrying back and forth on the sidewalk, like a confused ant whose anthill has just been overshadowed by a giant yellow steel picnic blanket. She keeps having to step back as the shadow of the ladder passes over her, or as I innocently swing the boom a few degrees left or right to get the perfect angle. She's pointing, she's gesticulating, her visor is askew. It's a masterpiece of suburban meltdown, and just as the ladder basket is nearing the level of my deck, a beautiful, perfect arc of defiance against the clear blue sky, I hear them. The gentle, almost apologetic whoop-whoop of approaching sirens. The cops. 2 police cruisers roll up, lights flashing, but sirens thankfully off now. Officer Rodriguez steps out of the first one. He's a big guy. Looks like he's seen a thing or two. He takes in the fire truck, Brenda waving her arms like a malfunctioning weather vane. The massive yellow ladder dominating the skyline of Acacia Drive. And me, perched at the controls, giving a jaunty little wave. Officer Rodriguez just sighs. A deep, soul-weary sigh that seems to carry the weight of every ridiculous suburban dispute he's ever had to mediate. Saturday, he says, to no one in particular, his voice heavy with resignation. It's always Saturday. Okay, play it cool, Mike, I tell myself. You're the reasonable one here. The one with the 60-foot hydraulically powered bright yellow beacon of problem-solving, but still reasonable. Officer Rodriguez is walking towards me, his expression a perfect blend of bewilderment and I don't get paid enough for this. All right, he begins, his voice a low rumble that still manages to cut through the lingering hydraulic hiss from the ladder. He stops a few feet away, hands on his hips, and does a slow, deliberate scan of the scene. Fire truck, check. Agitated woman who looks like she's about to spontaneously combust into a pile of bylaws, check. Smoking deck, check. Me, standing beside a piece of machinery that looks like it could pluck a 747 out of the sky, double check. Someone want to tell me what? He pauses for emphasis, and I cannot stress this enough. What is going on here? Brenda, bless her pointy little head, sees her chance. She rushes forward, nearly tripping over her own sensible orthopedic sandals. "Officer, arrest this man!" she shrieks, pointing a trembling finger at me. "He's created a hazardous aerial encroachment. He's mocking the bylaws. His ladder is probably not even the approved shade of safety yellow for designated community assistance equipment." Captain Miller, who's been watching this whole exchange with an expression I can only describe as professional resignation, mixed with deep, existential amusement, steps in smoothly. "Officer Rodriguez, this is Fire Captain Miller. We responded to a structure fire at this residence. He gestures with a thumb towards my house, where a faint wisp of smoke is still valiantly trying to escape the deck. And access was being impeded by this lady. He gives Brenda a pointed look that could curdle milk. Mr. He looks at me, an unspoken question in his eyes. Mike, I supply, trying for a helpful, innocent tone. Mike Smith, and this, I pat the cool steel of the boom lift affectionately, is my access facilitation device. Just trying to help the fire department, officer. You know, community spirit, public safety, all that good stuff. I beam at him. He doesn't beam back. Officer Rodriguez looks from Brenda, who is now hyperventilating slightly, to the ladder, then to my smoking deck, then back to me. Access facilitation device. He says each word slowly, like he's tasting something unfamiliar and possibly poisonous. Right, ma'am. He turns his attention to Brenda, and his voice, while still polite, now has an edge of steel I wouldn't want to argue with. Were you preventing the fire department from doing their job? Brenda draws herself up to her full 5'0" height. I was upholding the sanctity of our community bylaws, officer. That fire truck is a Class B restricted vehicle, according to the revised March 2023 transportation mandates. It clearly states. I think what Brenda means, officer, I interject, still aiming for helpful, is that she was very concerned about the long-term structural integrity of the pavement, which is admirable. Truly. But my deck was, you know, on its way to becoming kindling. Priorities, right? I offer a shrug that I hope conveys what can you do with these bylaw fanatics. Officer Rodriguez pinches the bridge of his nose. He looks like he's counting to 10, or maybe 1,000. He finally turns back to Brenda. Ma'am, with all due respect, right now this is an active fire scene. We need to let these men work. We can discuss any bylaw concerns or axle weight discrepancies later, at the station, if necessary. The unspoken threat hangs in the air, thick and heavy as the smoke from my grill. Brenda deflates. It's a visible thing, like air slowly leaking from a particularly obnoxious parade float. She knows she's lost this round. Her shoulders slump. She glares at me, then at the ladder, then back at Officer Rodriguez. She opens her mouth, then closes it again. Finally she huffs, a sound like a punctured bellows, and stalks off to the side of the road, muttering about incompetence, flagrant disregard, and contacting her attorney. She looked like a balloon animal that had just been told it wasn't invited to the party, and furthermore, all the other balloon animals thought it was a bit of a jerk. With Brenda temporarily neutralized, the firefighters, who had been watching this whole drama with a mixture of horror and barely concealed glee, spring into action. One of them, using the clear path under my magnificent ladder, unrolls a hose and makes a dash for my yard. Another gives me a quick thumbs up. The crisis, or at least the fire part of it, is officially being averted. The Brenda part? That might take a bit longer. So yeah, the Great Ladder Standoff of Acacia Drive. That's what they started calling it later that day, mostly on the neighborhood Facebook page where Nosy Nancy's shaky live stream had garnered an impressive number of shocked face emojis and popcorn-eating GIFs. The firefighters made quick work of the smoldering deck. Turns out, my enthusiastic smoking had indeed caused some embers to drop beneath the boards, and they were having a lovely little party down there. Nothing major, but definitely something that needed a professional dousing. Captain Miller came over afterwards, wiping soot from his face. He shook my hand, a gesture that felt surprisingly formal given the circumstances. Mr. Smith, he said, a slow grin spreading across his face. I've been a firefighter for 30 years. I've seen a lot. I have never seen anything like that. You got guts, son, and a hell of a ladder. Just a concerned citizen with oversized hobbies, I guess, I replied, trying to sound humble and not at all like a man who had just waged war against the HOA with a piece of construction equipment. Glad you guys could make it past the, local welcoming committee. One of the younger firefighters, the one with the sleeve tattoo, came over, eyes wide. Dude, that was awesome! Seriously, can I get a picture with the ladder? For my kid, he's gonna flip! A small crowd of neighbors had gathered by now, drawn by the holy trinity of suburban excitement, sirens, smoke, and a public argument. Some were actually clapping. Nosy Nancy was still giving a breathless commentary to her phone, probably interviewing eyewitnesses, her cat mostly. Mr. Henderson, my quiet neighbor from across the street, just gave me another one of his slow, deliberate thumbs-ups. It felt like receiving an Oscar. Suddenly, I wasn't just Mike who overcooked brisket and occasionally forgot to bring in the recycling bins on time. I was Ladder Mike, defender of decks, nemesis of nonsense. It had a nice ring to it. Brenda, meanwhile, was lurking by the curb, her earlier defeat having morphed into a simmering, photographic rage. She was taking pictures of my ladder from multiple angles with her phone, her expression thunderous. I could practically hear the gears grinding in her head as she drafted the mother of all HOA violation notices. Unauthorized aerial vehicle operation, obstruction of bylaw enforcement, excessive yellowness. The possibilities were endless. Sarah joined me on the lawn, shaking her head, but there was a definite smile playing on her lips. You are absolutely certifiable. You know that, right? Certifiably awesome, you mean, I corrected, slinging an arm around her shoulders. And hey, the deck's okay, mostly. Want some slightly smoked, everything? She laughed, leaning into me. Let's just order a pizza, Mike. A very large pizza. The ladder, its heroic duty done for the moment, stood silent sentinel over Acacia Drive. I used it later, once the fire department had packed up and left, after several more handshakes and a promise from firefighter Dave Steve to name his firstborn Mike Laddersmith, to get a good look at the damage to the deck. It was minor, thankfully. Just a few charred boards. The access facilitation device had proven its worth, not just as a tool of defiance, but as an actual, useful ladder. Who knew? A day or two later, things had quieted down. The smell of burnt brisket had mostly faded, replaced by the usual suburban symphony of lawnmowers and distant ice cream trucks. Sal, the contractor, the guy I'd hired to give me a quote on the epic treehouse, the original reason for the ladder's presence in my life, came by. He's a big, jovial guy, always got a story, always knows what's happening in the neighborhood. He pulled up in his beat-up pickup, took one look at the 60-foot yellow behemoth still parked majestically in my driveway, and burst out laughing. "Mike, my man!" he boomed, striding over and clapping me on the shoulder hard enough to realign my spine. I heard! Oh, I heard! You went full superhero on Brenda. My cousin's wife's sister lives 2 streets over, said it was all over the Facebook group. They're calling it Ladder versus Karen. Dawn of Justice. I couldn't help but laugh myself. It was a moment of pure desperation, Sal. She was going to let the house smolder over an Axel bylaw, I swear. Sal wiped a tear from his eye. That woman's a menace, a blight. Last year she tried to tell me my cement mixer was emotionally distressing to the neighborhood squirrels, said its rotational frequency was unharmonious. You, my friend, he declared, pointing a meaty finger at me, are a legend, a goddamn suburban legend. So about this treehouse, you gonna need a drawbridge for it now? Keep out the riffraff? Maybe a little slot for boiling oil? We walked around to the back, Sal still chuckling. We discussed the deck repairs. Turns out a few boards did need replacing. And then the treehouse plans. The latter, of course, was a constant topic of conversation. Sal was full of admiration, peppering me with questions about its lift capacity and hydraulic pressure, like I was some kind of heavy machinery guru instead of a guy who'd basically just figured out the up button under extreme duress. "You know," Sal said, leaning against the ladder's massive tire, "word's getting around the contractor community. Guys who've had run-ins with Brenda, which is pretty much everyone who's ever tried to hammer a nail in this neighborhood, they're raising a metaphorical beer to you. You've struck a blow for freedom, Mike. Freedom and reasonably priced roofing estimates." Apparently, I'd become the patron saint of anyone who'd ever received a passive-aggressive note about their lawn gnome, or the precise shade of their geraniums. It was a heavy mantle to bear, but someone had to do it. And apparently, that someone was me, and my very large ladder. It took 3 days. 3 glorious, Brenda-free days where I almost convinced myself the whole thing had been a bizarre, smoke-induced hallucination. Then, the letter arrived. Thick, creamy envelope. The official HOA letterhead. It practically smelled of smugness and fine print. "Ah, the fan mail I've been expecting," I said to Sarah, holding it up. "Probably a commendation for my quick thinking and community spirit. Maybe a gift basket." Sarah snorted. "More likely a bill for unauthorized heroic actions." I slid it open with a butter knife. My hands were steady. I was Ladder Mike now. I feared no envelope. The list of violations was impressive, even by Brenda's standards. I read them aloud to Sarah with appropriate dramatic flair. 1. Unauthorized deployment of heavy industrial equipment, parentheses, 1 articulating boom lift, yellow, close parentheses. My commentary? Guilty as charged. It was indeed yellow. Excellent attention to detail, Brenda. 2. Creation of a public spectacle and disturbance of neighborhood peace, parentheses, numerous onlookers, suspected live streaming to disreputable internet forums, close parentheses. My commentary. The peace was disturbed when someone tried to argue with a fire truck, Brenda, and Nancy's Facebook group is hardly a disreputable internet forum. It's where I get my casserole recipes. 3. Unapproved aerial maneuvers within a designated residential quiet zone. My commentary. Were birds also getting these notices for flying too jauntily? Inquiring minds want to know. 4. Willful bypassing of established HOA protocols for emergency vehicle access and egress. A little footnote here, in tiny print. Note: no such protocol for homeowner-operated boom lift assisted access currently exists within the community guidelines. This oversight is under review by the Bylaw Rectification Subcommittee and will be rectified forthwith. My commentary. Glad I could help identify gaps in their extensive bureaucracy. You're welcome. And then the kicker. A hefty fine, $500, payable within 10 business days. A demand for a formal, written apology to President Brenda for undermining her authority and causing undue emotional distress. And my personal favorite, a requirement to submit the ladder itself for an HOA safety and aesthetic compliance review prior to any further deployment. No exceptions. Sarah was reading over my shoulder. Aesthetic compliance review? For a ladder? Are they going to make you paint it beige to match the approved house trim colors? Over my dead, beautifully facilitated body, I declared. This means war, or at least a strongly worded appearance at the next HOA meeting. The HOA meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a sterile room that usually smelled faintly of chlorine and shattered dreams. I arrived early, letter in hand, ready for battle. To my surprise, the room was more crowded than usual. People were whispering, looking at me, then quickly looking away when I caught their eye. Brenda, naturally, was already there, seated at the head table with the other 2 board members. Chad, looking even more confused than usual, and Mrs. Periwinkle, a woman whose primary contribution to HOA governance seemed to be ensuring the seasonal flower arrangements were sufficiently funereal. Brenda launched into her report on recent community incidents with the dramatic flair of a Shakespearean actor tackling King Lear. She painted a picture of my barbecue as a reckless inferno-spawning act of domestic terrorism, and my ladder deployment as a dangerous anarchic assault on the very foundations of civilized suburban living. She described herself as the lone, brave guardian of order, standing firm against the tide of Michael-induced chaos. She might have even dabbed at a non-existent tear when she recounted the trauma of having her authority so flagrantly and vertically challenged. Listening to Brenda, I whispered to Sarah, who had insisted on coming for moral support, and, I suspected, for the entertainment value, you'd think I'd landed a 747 on her prize-winning begonias while simultaneously juggling flaming chainsaws and singing off-key sea shanties. When it was my turn, I stood up. I calmly presented my side of the story. I emphasized the blocked fire truck, the real emergency, minor as it turned out to be, and the simple fact that my actions, however unorthodox, were aimed at protecting my home and allowing the fire department to do their job. I even managed to get a copy of Nosy Nancy's live stream footage, anonymously emailed to me, of course, and I offered to play the clip where Brenda is clearly arguing about axle weights while smoke billows from my deck. The board declined to view unsubstantiated social media hearsay. Frankly, I concluded, looking directly at Brenda, then at the board, the only public nuisance that day was someone prioritizing asphalt integrity over a family's home. The latter was a last resort. A very tall, very effective last resort. And as for its aesthetic compliance, I added, unable to resist, I think its shade of safety yellow is both practical and surprisingly cheerful. Then, something amazing happened. Mrs. Gable, a sweet old lady who usually only spoke up to ask about the bake sale, timidly raised her hand. "Excuse me, President Brenda," she quavered, "but last Christmas you fined me $75 because my inflatable snowman was, and I quote, exhibiting excessive jollity for a non-peak holiday period. Was that really necessary?" Before Brenda could respond, Mr. Chen spoke up. "And what about my ornamental grass? You said it was non-native and culturally insensitive to the local squirrel population." "It's grass, Brenda. It came from Home Depot." Suddenly, it wasn't just my fight. It was like a scene from a movie where the downtrodden villagers finally pick up their pitchforks and storm the castle. Or, in this case, their slightly off-white curtain complaints and grievances about aggressively cheerful holiday decorations. One by one, other homeowners started sharing their own Brenda stories, a litany of petty fines, absurd warnings, and officious overreach. Chad looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him. Mrs. Periwinkle was examining her cuticles with intense interest. And Brenda? Brenda was slowly turning a fascinating shade of puce, her mouth opening and closing like a goldfish. The HOA president, who, up until this point, had mostly just looked like he wished he were anywhere else, cleared his throat. Faced with a room full of disgruntled residents, the clear evidence of Brenda's enthusiastic enforcement, and the sheer, unadulterated ridiculousness of the latter situation, he looked deeply uncomfortable. "Well," he mumbled, adjusting his tie, "it seems there are several matters that require further consideration. The board will take all of this under advisement." He banged his gavel weakly. "Meeting adjourned." It wasn't a total victory, not yet. But as I walked out of that clubhouse with Sarah, a dozen neighbors patted me on the back. It was a start, a beautiful, yellow, 60-foot start. A week later, I received another letter from the HOA. This one was much thinner. It curtly informed me that, After careful review and in light of new information regarding emergency vehicle access protocols, the fine had been waived. There was no mention of an apology to Brenda, and no demand for an aesthetic compliance review of my ladder. I found out later from Sal that Officer Rodriguez had apparently paid a quiet visit to the HOA president and had a very frank discussion about the definition of emergency access, the potential legal ramifications of impeding first responders, and the general optics of fining a guy who used his own giant ladder to help put out a fire his HOA president was actively trying to ignore. Sometimes the system works, in its own slow, bewildered way. Life on Acacia Drive settled into a new normal. I was Ladder Mike now. It was official. Neighbors waved more enthusiastically. Contractors I'd never met gave me knowing nods when they drove past. The guy at the local hardware store started giving me a mysterious first responder discount on everything from paintbrushes to bags of mulch. "You're doing the Lord's work, son," he'd said, winking. Brenda is still around, of course. Tyrants rarely abdicate gracefully. She still patrols in her golf cart, visor firmly in place, clipboard at the ready. But she's subdued, quieter. She gives my driveway, and the massive yellow ladder still parked there. The treehouse construction is a slow process, okay? A very wide berth. I think the ladder scares her, as it should. It's a 60-foot monument to the day her reign of petty terror hit a very large, very yellow, articulating speed bump. The treehouse is coming along nicely, thanks to the ladder. The kids think it's the coolest thing ever, mostly because Dad used it to fight the bad lady. I've also used it to retrieve Mrs. Henderson's perpetually adventurous cat, Mittens, from the tallest oak tree on the block, twice, to help Mr. Chen string his elaborate Christmas lights, in July, don't ask, and to get a frisbee off Old Man Peterson's notoriously inaccessible roof. It's become a sort of neighborhood utility vehicle. "You know," Sarah said the other day, watching me use the ladder to gently lower a bird's nest with chirping babies from a dangerously precarious branch near the power lines. "For a guy who almost burned down the deck, you're surprisingly handy with that thing." "It's a gift, babe," I replied, grinning down at her from my lofty perch. A very tall, articulating gift, and a reminder. A reminder that sometimes, when faced with bureaucratic nonsense and power-tripping pettiness, you just gotta rise above the crazy. Literally. The Grillzilla 5000 was retired, of course. After a solemn ceremony involving a sledgehammer and a very satisfying series of thuds, it was relegated to the scrap heap. We mostly order pizza now, but every now and then, when the wind is just right and I'm out on the, now fully repaired and slightly less flammable, deck, I swear I can hear the faint, distant screech of an HOA Karen encountering a situation that her clipboard simply cannot handle. Or maybe that's just a seagull. Either way, I've got a 60-foot ladder in the driveway, just in case. And Brenda knows it. Oh, she knows.